This is chapter 13 in your textbook. And we begin the chapter with the example of Gina, who is comparing her most recent internship, her summer internship, with the one that she had the year before. And she was impressed by her employer's work to improve the well-being of the employees, the community, and the environment, and comparing that to the internship which she had the previous summer, which she was working with a company that didn't share those goals. And so she was thinking that she was maybe more impressed with the most recent employer and their commitment. And so when we get into the first section of the chapter, 13.1, and this is describing sustainability and the way it creates business value, we're presented with the question, what is the goal of the corporation? What is the goal of the corporation? Is it just to maximize shareholder wealth? And we have the quote from Milton Friedman at the end of the chapter, or is it also, in addition to maximizing shareholder wealth, is it also to meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs? So perhaps, I'm not sure I'm the present generation anymore. I might be the past generation. You all are the future generations. And so hopefully this is something that would pique your interest. I want to quibble a little bit with the presentation of your authors in the book. The original conservation movement was the Republicans like Teddy Roosevelt, who were part of the early 1990s progressive movement. And they were hunters and outdoorsmen and women, and they wanted to preserve the environment because they saw deforestation and environmental pollution as a threat. What was the environmental pollution back then? Well, in the late 1800s, the late 19th century, you can see it particularly back in Britain, in London, with at this time, England was pretty much the leading empire in the world, and coal power was the leading production of energy, and coal power, particularly at that time, was very dirty. And America also had a lot of coal power. We had the anthracite coal in eastern Pennsylvania that was used to heat almost everybody's house back then. I was just in a historic house this weekend. I went just down Boundary Street west toward Greenwood, and when you get to the little village of Silver Street, there's a house that was built in the 1800s it had 7 coal-burning fireplaces. I mean, that was the heat that people used in their house. And coal fire was very sooty, and in the larger cities like London and New York at the time and Boston, there was a lot of soot in the air from everyone using coal power. And so in the late 19th century to the early 1900s, as the Victorian era went into the Edwardian era, there was a switch from coal to oil, especially in the New World. And John D. Rockefeller had created the Standard Oil Company. There was a big discovery of oil in western Pennsylvania, later in East Texas, California, Indiana, and Ohio. And oil power, and particularly its conversion into kerosene for lighting and heating, and also into gasoline for the emerging automobile industry, became the dominant form of energy. And it also became the dominant world economic power, or began to, at least in the New World, John D. Rockefeller very quickly became the richest man in the world. And in 1890, Congress passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, and eventually that was used to break up Standard Oil into 41 separate companies, because Standard Oil had control of about 90% of the energy industry in the early 1900s. So then in the Depression years, the interest in climate and conservation continued with the Civilian Conservation Corps, a Depression-era way to get people doing productive work who were thrown out of work by the Depression under FDR. And that greatly expanded our national park system, and Civilian Conservation Corps projects were largely responsible for building a lot of the public improvements particularly out west in the United States, as well as developing our national park system as people, continue to appreciate, a healthy outdoor kind of living. Then in the 1940s, and again, none of this is in your book, in the 1940s, we geared up for World War II, and we did anything to win. And we didn't care about coal, we didn't care about oil, we didn't care about asbestos, we didn't care about any of that stuff. We just wanted to make big ships and tanks and do what we needed to do to defeat the Germans in Europe and the Japanese in Asia, including the development of nuclear power, which was used rather notably against the Japanese. And of course, these all had environmental side effects. And after the war in the United States, we rebuilt the economy. The 1950s were really a boom time in America. And we greatly expanded our industrial might and power without too much concern for the externalities of that expansion. And in the 1960s, when I grew up in the New York City area, the Hudson River was so dangerous. It had so much pollution from industrial waste that it really was unhealthy. If you even fell, into the Hudson River, there's a good chance that it could damage your health. That's when the environmental movement began, and in the 1960s and 70s, with President Nixon eventually creating the Environmental Protection Agency in the early 1970s. And so that's kind of a preface to the information that you have in your book. Now, in your book, you're presented with some examples of some of the environmental disasters and some of the disasters in terms of social responsibility by some of the companies. And they tell you about the Union Carbide Bhopal disaster, which really was a disaster in India, in which there was a release of a chemical gas that killed anywhere from 4,000 to 12,000 people, which Union Carbide's people on the ground handled terribly incompetently. They denied that it happened, then they tried to cover it up, then they tried to blame it on the Indian nationals who worked at the factory and tried to shift blame and really mucked it up to the point that when the president of Union Carbide went over to show his respect and to try to to find out what he could do on the ground to atone for this disaster, he was arrested at the airport when he showed up in India and actually thrown in jail by the Indian authorities. And then he had to sneak back out on the corporate jet as soon as he got bailed out and never went back to stand trial. Now, there's a South Carolina connection to the Bhopal disaster. And it's probably something you've never heard of. But Have any of you ever heard of William F. Buckley? Anybody ever heard of William F. Buckley? He's credited with starting the conservative movement in the United States politically in the 1950s. And his little brother Reed, probably 20 years older than me, lived in Camden, South Carolina. And Reed Buckley, who was my friend during his lifetime, he started a school, the Buckley School in Camden, South Carolina, which still exists today. And what the Buckley School does is he was so embarrassed and horrified. He had been a debating champion at Yale when he was in college, and he was just horrified by the incompetence of the Union Carbide employees who showed up on television, trying to explain away the disaster in a very awkward and ineffective way. And so he started a public speaking school and a debating school designed to teach corporate employees and executives how to deal with the media in crisis situations and how to respond back, basically some debating skills when you were challenged by a reporter or someone else, a member of the public perhaps, or a shareholder at a meeting with one of those tough gotcha kind of questions. And that school still exists even after Mr. Buckley died. You can still go to Camden and pay, I don't know, $1,000 or maybe it's more than that now, dollars for some expertise in both public relations and also how to deal with the media and a little bit of debating skills. And it's quite worthwhile. I've actually been there twice myself, and I found that it improved my public speaking quite substantially. In fact, when I was there at the Buckley School, one of my classmates was David Limbaugh, who was the little brother of Rush Limbaugh. Has anybody ever heard of Rush Limbaugh? He used to be on the radio, conservative commentator. Everybody's shaking their head no. Well, in any event, Rush Limbaugh was probably the most successful radio talk show host in history, very conservative, considered to be largely responsible for the Republicans taking over Congress in the 1990s. I know this all seems like ancient history to you, the same way that the Victorian era and the Edwardian era seem like ancient history to me. But I was there when David Limbaugh met Reed Buckley, so I never met William F. Buckley or Rush Limbaugh, but I met both of their brothers. In fact, was there when they met each other. And you should look them up on Wikipedia sometime. They were very influential thinkers in American history. Well, anyhow, in the 1980s, we also had the Nestle baby formula scandal. Nestle was trying to expand its market for its baby formula into the developing world and was doing it in a way that really was leading to starvation in some of these areas because the women who delivered their babies stopped lactating when they got their children on baby formula, and then they couldn't afford to buy the baby formula once they got through the free samples that they got in the hospital. And so it was unintentional, but it created quite a disaster. And now Nestle is actually a leader in supporting infant nutrition throughout the world because of their response to the negative publicity that they received over that crisis. And then we've talked about this before, Johnson & Johnson and the Tylenol scandal of 1982, but that's an example of a company handling a crisis and their social responsibility correctly. They took every single capsule of Tylenol off the shelves everywhere in the world and re-engineered their product so it couldn't be tampered with in the future. They re-engineered both the product and the packaging to protect the consumer. And of course, that's now the industry standard for all sorts of medicines and all sorts of personal care products. In the 1990s, you're presented with the thoughts of John Elkington, who came up with the triple bottom line. that the responsibility of the company, that its goal wasn't just profitability, it was financial status, but also environmental status and social status. And so the company wanted to achieve success in all three of those dynamics. And the way that he referred to it in a highly circulated, well-received work was called People, Planet, and Profit. And the question, though, was, how do you find quantifiable and measurable social and environmental standards? What are the metrics going to be? How do we do that? And so in your book, later on in the section, you see the information about the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board and trying to develop metrics with respect to climate change and the carbon footprint. And that's something that, eventually culminated in the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015, in which every country in the world, with the exception of the United States, agreed to limit the increase of global temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And that's an agreement that has been highly controversial and politically in the United States. I mean, I would guess it's probably 50-50. So Trump, it was signed during the Obama administration. Trump canceled it his first year in presidency, and now Biden wants to bring it back. There have been, since the 1980s, there have been predictions that we only had 10 years left before the Earth got too hot to live on because of global warming. We had a PBS special hosted by Meryl Streep, the actress, back in the 1980s called Earth in the Balance. And only 10 more years until we all poach here in the United States and around the world because we're heating up the atmosphere so much. There was a discussion that the ozone hole in the upper atmosphere was the result of global warming, as well as aerosol sprays. And of course, a lot of aerosol sprays, I guess all of them now, have been taken off the market, or at least the gas that supposedly was creating the hole in the ozone layer. We were told by Al Gore several times that we only had 10 years left to survive, and now Representative Ocasio-Cortez is telling us that we're just a few years away from total destruction. It's controversial because a lot of people question the science behind it, and they're considered to be science deniers. Do you know that you can lower, all of us today can lower our carbon footprint? Do you know that? I mean, who wants to lower their carbon footprint? Anybody want to lower their carbon footprint? Okay, here's what you do. Stop exhaling. Okay, every time you exhale, you're emitting carbon dioxide. So if you stop breathing, you will reduce your carbon footprint. Now, I don't recommend that to any of you. I like all of you, but in any event, there's a balance here. There's a balance, and we have to temper the corporation, our desire for profits, with our responsibility to society and the environment, and a smart business, and with our own lives too. Our responsibility to look out for ourselves, and obviously we're not going to do anything that endangers our own lives, but also our responsibility to others. And so this is a long-standing conflict in life and in culture, and it's something that will continue to be one going forward. But generally speaking, when we find out that a company that we do business with is trying to act responsibly, that they treat their employees well, that they treat their customers well, that they have a sense of responsibility to all of their stakeholders, then we usually think better of them. And you know that many companies do, taking the example of Mr. Buckley and others, attempt to promote their own corporate social responsibility to both, both their shareholders, but also society as a whole. And what your book posits, and what many researchers have discovered, is that you can do well for yourself by doing good for others. And so every time you get a little coffee sleeve, with your coffee cup, there's usually something on it about recycling and fair trade. And oh, by the way, come visit our app on our website, and all sorts of what you might call virtue signaling, but is also sort of ESG marketing for the company. And what researchers have found is that consumers will pay more for the product, or they'll invest in the company because the business, they believe this company is doing the right thing for the environment and society. And some companies actually have gone so far as to recharter themselves, and to recharter themselves in a way, and let me see if I can find it in the, I went through all that stuff, so it's underneath here. Recharter themselves in a way that they are no longer responsible to their shareholders for activities that lower corporate value if they're benefiting society. It used to be under traditional law that if you were a corporate director or a corporate executive, you had a responsibility to your board and to your shareholders to maximize the value of the company. That was a legal standard. And if you took actions that were considered to be waste by, say, giving $500 million to the rainforest or something like that, that you could actually be sued for that loss to the corporation for the waste of that money on something that didn't benefit the corporation at all. Okay, so that was a very hard standard, and that's been relaxed in many states and other jurisdictions, both in the United States and around the world. And the book gives you the example of the Patagonia company that rechartered itself in California as a benefit company. And a benefit company is one in which you can't pursue that sort of action against the directors and the executives if they're engaging in something that's benefiting society or the environment in their discretion. Okay, so the book doesn't go into all that legalese stuff, but it does actually, that's what they're talking about. And so Patagonia is a company that is making some pretty good money, but they don't have to maximize the amount of their profitability. They think that they're creating value with some of these externalities. And so you've got the example also, besides Patagonia, of Walmart and their very specific greenhouse gas reduction goals. And these are measurable metrics that they created, as well as they wanted to have zero waste in landfills by 2025. And by 2015, 75% of their global waste was already diverted from landfills, that was recycled in some way. That was a positive thing, or at least not just filling up garbage dumps around the world. And you've got the example also of dealing with employees and the model of gravity payments. This was something that was highly publicized in 2015. You had Dan Price, who was the co-founder with his brother and the CEO of a credit card processing company. Now, can you imagine anything more mind-numbing than being a credit card processor? I mean, I would just, that's a task I would only, hope for a machine. but they had this credit card processing company that Dan and his brother Lucas formed. And what they did is Dan Price was the CEO, and he said he was going to cut his $1 million plus salary to $70,000, and he was going to raise the minimum salary for all of his 120 employees to $70,000 a year. And he had done this partly because of a study by a psych professor at Princeton University who had determined that at that time, employee happiness, at least in terms of compensation, employee happiness was not adversely affected by compensation as long as people were making at least $70,000 or $75,000 per year. And so what happened is really interesting. What happened was, he considered employee happiness to be an important metric. And so he wanted to have happy employees. Well, some employees didn't like the fact that everybody in the company was going to make $70,000, and they were disgruntled. And guess what happened? They left. But the people who stayed and the people who came were all happy with the new corporate culture and with the new kind of minimum wage they had. And it kind of created some employee cohesion as a team. And what happened was, at least until the COVID crisis, the company grew by about 200%. I mean, their earnings went from, I forget how much, it was like $3 billion to over $10 billion in the first 3 years of the change in compensation. And so that was now the book says that employee happiness months after the decision were decreasing. I'm not so sure that's true. If you look at the Wikipedia entry for Gravity Payments, which takes us out to the present day, maybe the jury's still out on it, but they seem to be doing okay. They just had a little hiccup with COVID, so they lost some of their business because of that. But so did a lot of businesses. You've also got the Grameen Bank example. This is a very good example of a trend around the world called micro lending or microfinancing. This was a company that decided that it was going to eliminate traditional credit standards to expand lending at reasonable market rates to some poor small entrepreneurs, basically basket weavers in Bangladesh and other small merchants like that. And it's had a tremendous impact and has been quite profitable. The small borrowers seem to pay back their loans, and they have been using the profits that are made to reinvest in the community and to improve the infrastructure in a lot of the smaller or at least less developed areas that they do business. And not smaller, obviously. India and Bangladesh have lots and lots of people, but it's now it's helped lift a lot of people out of poverty, and there actually was a Nobel Peace Prize awarded for that. Okay, so the book concludes this section with the statement by Milton Friedman that he argued that a manager acting as an agent of the business owner, for that person, there is one and only one social responsibility of business, to use its resources and to engage in activities designed to increase its profits so long as it stays within the rules of the game, which is to say, engages in open and free competition without deception or fraud. In other words, obey the law and act ethically. And the book asks us a question about that. I think it's the wrong question. I think that a lot of people have interpreted Milton Friedman's remarks, and he also won a Nobel Prize, although he won it for economics, not peace. Milton Friedman's idea, I believe, is that you have to consider, not just the short run, but also the long run. So not just the short-term results, but also the long-term results of your decisions. And so it's okay to sacrifice current profits for something that's going to improve either your company's reputation, which might lead to more business over time, or to lead to a better society, which is going to create a condition in which your business could thrive even more in the future. And so I think if you were to amend Friedman's remarks, or at least take them in that context, you would be getting more to what the true meaning of his words were. And that might be a way to reconcile it with the sustainability developments in accounting that we've gone through in this section. Now, I will tell you that many efforts at demonstrating both social and environmental responsibility backfire. And you only have to look at, look at Twitter, look at Bed Bath & Beyond. When you try to cancel people who you think are social pariahs, you have to worry about the 60 or 70 million members of society who might like those social pariahs and think the same way. And so as you consider how do you come up with social and environmental responsibility goals that you can get, then you get 80% of the people to support. And so that's that's kind of what the what the whole game is in terms of this particular activity. Bed Bath & Beyond is once they kick Mike Lindell off, they're basically they're going bankrupt. They're closing stores left and right, and a lot of their business has been replaced by mail order since that occurred. Twitter, we all every day you see in the news all the turmoil at Twitter, as Elon Musk is probably doing the same version of social media change in culture that Dan Price did with gravity payments. I mean, people are who liked Twitter the way it was before Elon Musk are leaving in droves, and people who were disappointed with the way Twitter was before Musk are coming back. So he's losing some and getting some back, and we'll see where that all works out. Maybe there'll be Trump has created a social media platform, so he said he's not coming back to Twitter. Good luck with that. The political left doesn't seem to like Elon Musk very well, so maybe they'll come up with their own Twitter. Maybe President Obama, or maybe somebody in the Biden family will start another social media platform. So we'll see where that all ends up. Okay, the next section, 13.2, identifying user need for information. And this is an examination of who your stakeholders are. So the book begins with just the example of the shareholders, and you've got also lenders and employees and customers, government and regulators, and the community as a whole. And what information do they need? What information do you deliver to them, and how do you present it? And so obviously for your shareholders and employees, you're going to have a lot more financial information. For the public at large and regulators, you have to have certain types of financial information. For customers, you want to make sure that they're comfortable with the companies that they're doing business with. And I actually was watching a football game this weekend, and there was a commercial that came on for a company that is trying to get you to buy from them because they're not like the companies that do the sort of left-leaning social justice types of investments. And so that I hadn't really seen that before, but that was kind of interesting. Thought about that as I was preparing to talk about this today. But something called Mammoth Nation wants you to buy from them because they're not like I don't know, Walmart or Coca-Cola. And so that's what Section 13.2 is all about. And then you can certainly read the considerations there. And then they do actually follow up on the discussion about Patagonia in the earlier section by giving you some more information about how the public benefit corporations work. And then this is actually probably the only other meaty information that's in the chapter, and that is the examples of major sustainability initiatives. And one of them, one of the most important ones, was the Global Reporting Initiative that started in 1997. And today, of the 250 largest companies in the world, over 90% of them actually do some sort of sustainability reporting on an annual basis. And so, if you're considering working for one of these larger corporations, and if this is an important goal for you as an employee, you can look online, and each of these companies have their sustainability reports published at their websites. And even companies that, perhaps in the past, when I was your age and we were looking at Dow Chemical, Dow Chemical was of course, considered to be a big polluter and a big supporter of the military and that sort of thing. And now, if you if you look at them online, they look like they're just happy and fresh as a daisy. So, some of it's marketing, but a lot of it's real. So, a lot of these companies are actually, taking efforts that certainly they believe and their directors believe are making the world a better place. So you can't be too jaundiced about this. Now, as they present the Global Reporting Initiative, there are 10 reporting principles that are required. I didn't go back and check the links on this, but so I don't know exactly the 10 reporting principles in GRI 101 and the contextual information and how firm managers act in 102 and 103, and then the topic-specific standards of 200, 300, and 400. But these are really now well ingrained in corporate reporting. And I have read some of the sustainability reports, and you can certainly go back and find the ones from Coca-Cola, Dow Chemical, Bank of America, and they're all, very specific and very, metric-driven. I mean, they establish their goals, they create, their certain targets, and then they monitor and report on whether they have achieved those results. And so it really is affecting corporate behavior. And as a consumer, if that's important to you also, you can check them out that way. I do have to say that there is some skepticism about all this. Probably the primary example that I think of is the English comedian Ricky Gervais at the 2020 Golden Globe Awards, in which he noted that Tim Cook, the head of Apple, was in the audience because Apple had gotten into the film production business and had created a very popular television series, I guess, or maybe a streaming series. It's the one that I think Reese Witherspoon is on, and I've forgotten exactly what the name of it is. But in any event, he said that Apple had created this show about corporate responsibility and ethics and all this good behavior while they're producing products at sweatshops in China. And so in any event, oftentimes the sustainability reports might be a little bit less than completely inclusive of all of the company's activities, notwithstanding the good things that they're doing. So anyhow, it was a pretty funny monologue. It's a little blue, so put your filters on. And a lot of the copies of it had a lot of words bleeped out, but that's how they roll at the Golden Globe Awards, I guess. So it might not be appropriate for all of you in this audience. The section ends with a discussion of the China Mobile Limited and their GRI reports. A company that has 460,000 employees. That's pretty darn impressive. That's a large company, largest mobile telecommunications company in the world, at least at the time this book was written. And they said that they were having challenges in quantifying the costs and benefits of their sustainability efforts. Well, I'll just leave that to your own review. There's also a last section here, future issues and sustainability, and it talks about Tesla, Elon Musk again, and just some of their activities as well. I think that probably the authors of this book, having promoted Elon Musk very substantially, are probably less thrilled with Elon Musk today than they were, say, back in 2018 when this book was written. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future. You all will be the ones who get out there and determine what the future issues in sustainability are. So, go out there and do your best. That's all I have for today. It's about 9:40. Time to wrap it up. Have a happy Thanksgiving and get home safely. And if I don't see you again, have a great holiday season. And hopefully I'll see some of you in the spring. Bye. Okay, that's it for today. Have a great day. Bye.